Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. And today we're going to take a look at a knife that I really like. And I have to say, get a lot of joy out of using and carrying. And it's just this really fun knife. And I'm going to have a lot of fun sharing it with you guys. So this is the PMP Knives Revenge. As you can see there on the blade, this is 237 out of 350. It's in M390 steel. This is a bronze version. I think this is available, well, I know this is available in a few other colors. I think you can also get a satin blade rather than a stonewashed blade. I've seen a couple, I'm pretty certain, out there in the wild. I will say this, I got this knife from White Mountain Knives, and if you want to do the same, you can use my discount code SHARPSTUFF to save yourself 10%. These guys go for $225, I think, which honestly, guys, is pretty good, especially when you get that discount code. So you'll see what I mean when we go ahead and start working our way through this knife. But before we go too much further, let me just say PMP Knives has an interesting sort of history, and something I like to see is when the owner decided he wanted to make knives. Initially, the first knife, by the way, that came out was the Beast, and it was a perfect knife for them to come out with because it was just this massive thing that was a real novelty and got a lot of attention in the community. And I think that there's a lesson there, right? It takes more than just making a good knife. This is a great knife, but were this to be their first offering, I'm not sure if we'd be talking about this. The fact that they came out with the Beast, which was this massive 13-ounce hunk of metal, okay, that was really more of an exercise in, just taking the overbuilt idea to a stupid extreme, but it got a lot of attention. It did something really outlandish, and for that reason, I think, they kind of made a bit of a splash, and we're still talking about it. But what they did, in addition to that, they also tested out a bunch of manufacturers. So they got a bunch of people to make stuff. We Knives was one for sure, as well as a couple of others, and they ultimately landed on Maxace as the manufacturer, which, initially, Maxace doesn't really stand out in my mind as being my go-to high-end knife manufacturer, but they have done a fantastic job here. So I'm actually a little tempted to go out and try some other Maxace knives. And if you guys have recommendations, let me know down in the comments below, because honestly, the quality and the fit and finish on this knife is really excellent. And so that kind of makes me think maybe I'm overlooking Maxace and shouldn't be doing that. So look for, as I say, make some recommendations down below, and perhaps you'll see some Maxace knives on the channel in the not too distant future, because this one is pretty stinking impressive. Now, having said that, this is a big knife, okay? 8 7/8 overall, 3 13/16, so just a little over 5, or a little over 3/4 on the blade length there, 5 1/16 on the overall length. The grip area here is 3 11/16, so just a hair under 3 3/4 inches. And the other thing that's kind of cool about this knife is it's a big knife, and it looks like really heavy duty, and it is in some respects, but when you turn the knife this way, you realize it's actually pretty thin. So it's only 1/2 inch thick, and the blade stock is fairly thin, under 1/8 of an inch thick on the blade stock, which is a little bit surprising. The other thing that's surprising is, one, this knife doesn't feel as heavy as it is. It feels actually quite good in hand, and it's 6.5 ounces, which is a little hefty, but honestly, for a knife of this size, not that bad. And when you put this in pocket, it's actually quite comfortable. And I think that's just because the handle is so thin that it doesn't create any pressure. It doesn't really push on your pocket in any way. In terms of how it carries very comfortably. Now, it's not a deep carry knife. You can see the milling ends here on the knife, so you're going to be, something like this sticking out of your pocket. That's not a thing for me. I really don't care, but I know some of you will be a little put off by that. We'll talk more about the pocket clip when we get to the construction portion of our discussion. So let's go ahead, now that we've got the size and weight and carry out of the way. So it's a big knife, it's a little hefty, but it carries really comfortably, and especially if you're used to that, and if you like big knives, you're probably not that worried about it. Moving on here to the blade, I really like this blade. I like the blade shape. I like the thinness behind the edge. I like the very high flat grind. I like that it's pretty thin stock. Not so thin that it feels like unsubstantial or less than it should be. I'm satisfied with this blade stock, but the performance, M390 steel, really nice stonewash finish, which I think ties in well with the bronze. Overall, just really, really nicely done all around. Cuts like crazy, right? Whether you're cutting up cardboard or you're doing kitchen work or whatever the case may be, it performs really, really nicely. And of course, being M390, holds an edge, is highly stain resistant, highly corrosion resistant. So yeah, great blade. I love this shape. Now again, if you don't like Wharncliffe blades, if you don't like stone washes, actually I think there is a satin finish available on this as well. I may have already mentioned that, but just in case I didn't, I'll mention it now. So yeah, I think this blade is a real win. I love the way they've done the sharpening choil. Look how much I've got there to continue sharpening this knife and not really see any significant smile or anything. So very, very nicely done on the blade, just all around. Moving on to the action, lockup and deployment. So we've got a flipper deployed knife, and I think primarily it's meant to be deployed by the flipper. The flipper is kind of small, which is really nice to see. It's nice that it's not, you know, it's kind of an interesting just difference that you don't always see in every knife. It's a little bit sharp. Now it's not the end of the world. I can flip it just fine. And even if you're going to do this for half an hour or something, it's going to be fine. But perhaps if you were just obsessively flipping this for hours and hours on end, it would get a little tiresome on your index finger there. You can also spidey flick the knife. You could also roll it open, just do a thumb roll, but you can spidey flick the knife as well. Well, I always can, except for right this moment when I'm on camera. There you go. So yeah, lots of deployment methods. It's very smooth. We got dual row bearings on this, which is really, really nice. The lockup is of course rock solid. Now I will say this pivot screw will kind of over time loosen up a little bit. And normally in the period that I'm reviewing a knife, I don't put any Loctite on that pivot because I just want to see how it does and how often I have to kind of pay attention to it. This one is pretty good, but I would say about every week and a half or so, I'd start to notice just a little bit of side to side play and I'd have to tighten it up. It's been about a week that I've been carrying this, and there's, I guess if I can get a little bit, so it needs probably one little adjustment on that lock bar, on that pivot. Also the little, I think it's supposed to be a whale tail, but I could be wrong. It'll kind of move around on you a little bit, which is an indication that perhaps that's moving on you a little. Anyway, not a deal breaker. In fact, not even a big deal, because if you just pop this out, put some Loctite in, adjust it to the way you want it, you'll be good to go. All right, very, very smooth though, very enjoyable action. Let me just show you how drop shut that is. Very, very nicely done on that overall action. And that's one of the things that is very impressive about this knife and makes me think perhaps I should check out another Max Ace knife or two. The other thing is, before we move off of this, take lock bar insert, which is pretty much expected at this point, but also the lock bar is quite accessible, and I do like that quite a lot as well. Okay, so lockup and deployment, very, very good. All the things that you would expect from a high-end titanium frame lock are here. And so, you know, just no real complaints at all. I actually quite enjoy this knife. Now, the thing that perhaps stands out the most to me about this is a couple of things pertaining to the handle. First off, let's see if I can show you. There you go. Look at the handle finish there. It's sort of a stonewash with a bronze anodization. I really, really like that. So full points for just the aesthetics here. I love these large screws. Really, it just brings the design together really, really nicely. So I'm a huge fan of the way they've done the screws. And the other thing is, you get this knife in hand and it just feels really, really good in a saber grip, especially. Hammer grip is good, it's okay. Saber grip just feels so natural. Don't know about reverse grip. Yeah, reverse grip is quite good as well. Even in sort of a draw cutting grip, you can do this quite nicely. So ergonomics here are a real win. And to me, right, yeah, I guess to most people, what are the two things you care about most with a knife? Does it cut well, and does it feel good in hand while you're doing it? And those two things, this knife really, really does well. So I'm really happy with how they've done the overall construction and especially the ergonomics. Now, the one thing I will say as a bit of a complaint is when I'm wearing thicker pants, which you guys know I sometimes wear 511s, this clip does not really accommodate 511s very well. In all my other pants, it's just fine, but I wish there could be just a little more room under that clip for some of the thicker sort of hems on the pockets of pants I like to wear. Let's go ahead now and get to some comparisons. I think this stacks up really well to some of the higher end stuff that's out there. First off, just to give you an idea of size, let's grab a pair of two. So if you're if you like larger knives, this is definitely on the bigger side. You can see it's quite a bit bigger than a PM2 and of course weighs more as well. A knife that I wanted to bring in because it's sort of another, higher end Chinese option. This is, of course, the Riot Torrent. This is one of my favorite all-time high end production knives. And the overall refinement, the action, the fit and finish is very, very close. And that's why I wanted to bring this in, because I think the value is pretty darn good on this. Now, it was better. A few places had these on sale for like $190, I want to say. I wasn't able to find it anywhere for that price these days. They've all gone back up. But for $225, the level of quality this hits is right up there, which I have to say is very good. Thinking of higher end titanium frame locks, you kind of got to bring a ZT in. I don't always, because I don't always have a ZT in the collection, but this is a great one other than the handle color, which I'm not in love with, although it's kind of growing on me because I like the knife itself so much. What else have we got here for comparison? A couple more larger knives. So one of my favorite large knives, the Benchmade Crooked River, even bigger, of course, than the Revenge. Price point on this guy is a little bit less, unless you've done what I've done with the forged carbon fiber and paid extra to get some upgrades, and then you've got a different ball game. Finally, another knife that I think I like this design as well, and for some reason these knives put me in mind of each other. It doesn't make sense, but I feel like, this one's slim, it's big, it's comfortable in hand, and so somehow these feel like they're related to me in some way. Obviously the amalgam, though, really where it stands out is the fact that this thing weighs like 4 ounces for a knife that's quite large, over 8.75 inches. All right, so those are some, I think, worthwhile comparisons for you. And what are my overall thoughts here? Okay, so my overall thoughts on this knife, yeah, if you haven't figured it out by now, I am definitely a fan. I really, really like the design. I love the materials. It's a really, really attractive knife that's well put together in really, really nice material choices. So what is not to like? Of course, there are color variants and blade variants available. I mean, satin or stonewash, but then there's also blue and probably plain titanium as well as the bronze. So lots of options there. Really, really like this knife. Definitely recommend it. Use my link in the description box. If you're going to go buy one, you may as well get 10% off. And the discount code for that is Sharp Stuff. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll talk to you soon.